Thank you, Venerable Dhammaratana. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. 下午好. Buenas tardes en español. Dear Venerable Dr. Dhammaratana and Master Zhang Wusheng, thank you for inviting me to participate in this first International Forum on Global Faith and Culture. I also want to greet the whole staff and the volunteers for their exceptional work in this organization. Venerable monks, ladies and gentlemen, we have come here summoned by a matter of urgency. Literally, the call says that the world community is today facing various crises causing unprecedented misery and suffering to millions and millions of people. And none of us here need proof of the truth of this statement. Given the evidence, we can affirm that since World War II, the world has never globally faced a series of problems like the current ones, which increase without prospects for sufficient solutions. Last week, I was in Seoul, South Korea, to participate in a conference of these same characteristics, promoted by an evangelical Christian organization. There, I had the opportunity to see the same concern that brings us here today on the part of Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh brothers, among others. Now, I have flown from Madrid back to Singapore because I believe that it is an obligation and almost a moral imperative to make every possible effort to seek joint and coordinated solutions at a time when many citizens of the world are facing situations of war, persecution, economic difficulty, and inequality. This forum has been organized by Buddhist teachers. The Buddha repeated again and again when faced with questions that sought to divert the focus from the main question that he only spoke about suffering and the end of suffering. So, as Buddhist practitioners, this is also what we have to talk about, suffering. This is not the first forum in which these issues are put on the table, nor will it be, of course, the last one. But I would like that together we can make this meeting a platform from which to propose effective solutions to this global emergency. We are all aware of the messages that are launched from media outlets around the world, alerting us to a series of global problems so that we direct our attention towards them. In many cases, I could not agree more. And yet, I cannot accept that those same media which defend the economic and power interests of their owners and which are responsible for a large part of those same problems are the ones who show us the path and dictate the solutions that we must implement. To give you an example, these media systematically alert us to the climate emergency, referring to the planet. But following the teachings of the Buddha, I cannot talk about the planet if it is not in relation to the human being. That is, I believe that we should talk about the world, not only the planet. The human life develops in this world, and that is what we must deal with. The preservation of the natural environment cannot be carried out at the expense of people's well-being or by adding more suffering to the hardships inherent to the human condition. Addressing the issue of suffering in the world and searching for solutions requires a procedure that is known to all, which is none other than analyzing the symptoms establishing a diagnosis, analyzing the causes, and applying the treatment. The propaganda we receive through the media tries to direct our attention towards a series of issues that are presented as the origin of the problem, but they are not. The media tries to confuse us by making us believe that the consequences are the causes themselves, so that the solutions proposed will never end the problem because they do not address the source of the problem. And this is because, for many corporations, the most important on a global level, problems are an infinite source of income, and therefore the necessary food for infinite greed. Venerables, ladies and gentlemen, during the years of my first university degree, I studied that in the world there were about 70 communications groups. Today, tracing the shareholding of the mass media, we will see that there are only 5 left. 5 groups that filter reality to us, making it reach our homes through radio, television, press, and digital media to offer us a distorted and fallacious vision, apocalyptic advertisements that seek to terrify us, spectacular distractions to keep us entertained, and ultimately, messages aimed at nullifying the response capacity of individuals. And this distorted vision, ladies and gentlemen, has become a doctrine. It is the secular doctrine of our days, a doctrine that has supplanted the ethical values that should guide the lives of human beings, and that, in opposition to those ethical values, is based on the promotion of greed, on the use of hatred to divide society, and in the illusion of a reality that highlights the mere pleasures of the senses as a source of happiness. I am not going to say what is true and false in all that doctrine, but I am going to refer to one of the suttas of the Buddha that I value most, that I reread frequently, and that predisposes me to analyze things from a different perspective, objective and ethical. In the Kalama Sutta of the Anguttara Nikaya, the teacher recommends, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by a collection of texts, by logic, by inferential reasoning, by reasoned cogitation, by the acceptance of a view after pondering it, by the seeming competence of a speaker, or because you think the ascetic is our teacher. But when you know for yourselves, these things are unwholesome, these things are blamable, these things are censured by the wise, these things, if undertaken and practiced, lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. And based on the same reasoning, he continues, when you know for yourselves these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise, these things, if undertaken and practiced, lead to the welfare and happiness, then you should engage in them. The first of the causes of suffering, already noted, is greed. In its broadest sense of the word, desire for more wealth, more material goods, more well-being, more empty experiences, more pleasure as a source of happiness. In fact, Buddhism does not deny the existence of happiness, but points out that it is impermanent and that one cannot reliably hold on to it. This greed is directly related to one of the most pressing problems that the world is experiencing, and that is the poor distribution and misuse of resources that ultimately come from nature. In this regard, the messages we receive identify the problem in the limited nature of resources. But the issue is not that the resources are limited, but rather the greedy use we make of them. If resources were unlimited, would that mean we could also waste without limit? Would the sensual pleasures we derive from these resources then become the driving force of our existence? Think about it. When this idea has been imposed on the world throughout history, the effects have been always devastating. We have to act against greed and mask the true objectives of advertising, which is no other than creating needs in people. And we must cultivate restraint in consumption and generosity in our behavior, shown to others by our own example. The second cause is hatred, also in its broadest sense, from the minimal discomfort of a dislike to the blind hatred that leads to the murder and extermination of the other. In Europe and the United States of America, we are witnessing an increasing number of attacks in schools, which is the saddest reflection of the violence that spreads throughout the world and has reached the youngest. Thus, we are confirming that this hatred that ends up unleashing violence simmers in people's mind, even as children. We have to act to prevent it in the same school, and the basis is mutual knowledge, respect, and collaboration between different people, as we are here now. Buddhism takes a very optimistic view of the possibilities of human transformation, understanding that the potential for such transformation is already latent in the depths of the mind, a mind that shines brightly, but it is contaminated by mental defilements. So there is a remedy, and it must begin with education. Education is also the basis for overcoming the third source of suffering, which is ignorance, not of academic knowledge, but ignorance of the true nature of existence. Brothers and sisters gathered here, now I present you my proposal. I invite all religious beliefs represented here by religious leaders to work together to prepare a decalogue of those human values that are common to all. This decalogue, which must be comprehensive, recounting all mental defilements and the corresponding virtues that counteract them, can become an effective guide to implement in educational programs. These human values are not typical of a single religion, but are shared by all religions, and are typical of human nature in its purest state. Thus, this decalogue should not bear the name of any religion in particular, and all of them at the same time, so that we make it available to educational authorities around the world as a basic tool for a culture of peace. Violence and suffering are the product of a human mind that needs to be purified, and peace is only possible throughout mental peace. The transformation that human beings need to combat the roots of suffering is effected through two twin aspects: abandonment, pahana in Pali language, the elimination of the mind from all that is harmful and unhealthy, and development, bhavana in Pali language, the cultivation of qualities that are healthy, pure, and purifying. Finally, just a message of encouragement and hope. We have a very lot of work to do outside from now on. Brothers and sisters, let's get to work. We need it. Thank you very much.